Death. Death comes for us all eventually. Seriously, dude? You can't be dead-ass right now. Revive me and I'll take you to Goth IHOP.
Done.
Anyway, as I was saying before I died, actually this is a pretty good segue, death plays around too much. He either comes too early or too late. The latter is actually what I'm here to talk about. Should people have the right to die? Should physician-assisted death be legal? In the last few decades, it's been made legal in 10 states and explicitly illegal in 12. But should it be legal everywhere? In most places, death is considered a crime. The very wording implies it to be such. You don't perform a suicide, you commit it. Which makes sense. It's pretty frowned upon for obvious reasons. You 99.999% of the time should not kill yourself. Believe it or not, though, there is a small group of people experiencing incurable suffering that should, at least in my opinion, be allowed to die. Someone's quality of life is never going to improve. They should have the right to go on their own terms, peacefully, and with dignity. But there is opposition to it, mostly rooted in theology, people believing that it is up to a higher power when one gets to go. But ignoring theology and thinking objectively, there's a lot of different perspectives on what makes a good death. You ask just different individuals on the street.
I want to die defending my beautiful country, which would never do anything bad.
I just wants to die surrounded by my friends and family type shit.
I want to die peacefully in my sleep.
I don't want to die at all.
Too bad.
I want to die doing what I love.
Oh, so skateboarding.
You.
What? Yeah, sorry, I forgot that I lived in a town with a bunch of freaky people. Anyways, you get the point. Notice how none of them said they wanted to die slowly and painfully? Well, that's what physician-assisted suicide is for. People have been trying to make this stuff available for quite a while. 1870, a guy named Samuel D. Williams suggested the idea of using anesthetics and morphine to end the life of a patient. By the early 20th century, there were numerous advocates for assisted death, some of whom were themselves terminally ill. In the 1930s came Dignity in Dying, then called the Voluntary Euthanasia Legislation Society. Supporters included H.G. Wells, Lawrence Houseman, Eleanor Rathbone, and some other thinkers of the time. In 1936, a British lord tried to pass a voluntary euthanasia bill, but Parliament rejected it. Most opposition comes from theology, though these days there is a little bit rooted in history, but it's all from one place. The Nazis, they were obsessed with eugenics, they believed some people didn't deserve to exist, so they involuntarily euthanized a bunch of people. Many critics of physician-assisted death like to compare voluntary and involuntary euthanasia, even though there's a pretty big difference between a Nazi strapping you down to a table and forcing you to die because you're autistic, and kill me. Ironically, some of the same people that use that as an argument also fall for the propaganda that suggests that certain people are an issue to be solved, but I'm not going to get into that right now. These discussions wouldn't breach the mainstream until they were forced into the mainstream by a guy named Dr. Jack Kevorkian, Dr. Death. He got his nickname from doing a lot of morbid experiments and studies over the course of his life. In 1988, he published his famous article, The Last Fearsome Taboo, Medical Aspects of Planned Death, in which he proposes the establishment of suicide clinics. In 1989, he built a thing called a Thanatron that kills somebody when they pull a string, and then with his assistance, a lady named Janet Atkins, who was suffering from Alzheimer's, used it. Since he didn't directly administer the chemicals that put her into a coma and then stopped her heart, he could not be arrested. So he kept up. He did it 100 more times. He conducted a lot of interviews to make sure that he was helping people die that needed to die, and not just people that wanted to die. Since he couldn't get anything on a federal level to acknowledge what he was doing, he went and he directly administered the killing drugs to a man named Thomas Houck, who was paralyzed, and presented a recording of it in an interview on 60 Minutes, and he was then put in jail. Even though he never got to the Supreme Court, he was able to get the topic into the mainstream, and since then it's been much more discussed and much more represented in media. I believe there was an episode about it in Grey's Anatomy. There was a movie called Me Before You, where the emotional impact of planned death is thoroughly explored. Death is hard on everyone. Even if it's painless, it brings pain. The value of life is undefinable, but undeniable. The value of life for some can get very low. The point when it gets low enough to let go will likely never be unanimously agreed upon, but as with any high-stakes issue, for the sake of those who need it, a line should be drawn somewhere. The legal drinking age and age of consent, for example, can vary between different countries, but we all agree that the youth should be unintoxicated and unmolested. We shouldn't tear down statues of our founders, but we also shouldn't enshrine tyrants. We can't kill babies, but we can't ban abortion. We can't just let anyone die, but we shouldn't force the terminally ill to suffer. The question shouldn't be between doing nothing and letting suffering continue, or drawing a line and making progress. The question should be, where do we draw the line?
God, I love this place.
Dude, just do your job.